All right, welcome everybody. What's going on? Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you to everyone out there, as always, for listening or watching the show, however you consume it. Big thank you to our sponsor as well today, Sunny Reds, 1841 Abbott Road. This is going to be a packed midweek show. As usual, I'm joined by my good buddy over at Buffalo Rumbling / SB Nation, my man Matt Warren. What's going on, dude? How you doing?
Everything's good over here.
We're going to get to a lot of stuff today. We're recording this like we usually do, Tuesday, late morning, close to lunchtime. I want to talk potential sneaky draft needs for the Bills today. We're going to hit on that. I've come up using the trade value chart with some potential Bills trade up scenarios. I'm going to throw some of those at you, and also a very busy Tuesday morning at the NFL owners meetings in Florida. Lots of rule proposal resolutions. Some of them passed, some of them tabled for now until mid-May. We'll discuss those as well. Lots of stuff to get to here on Talking Buffalo today. Let me start by asking you this, because you come on once a week and this happened since we talked, but it is something that we've spent considerable amount of time talking about on the show in recent weeks. It almost feels like old news right now with all this other shit that's going on.
Right.
But Christian Benford signs an extension with the Buffalo Bills. That happened last Saturday, early afternoon. 4 years, $76 million. We still don't know all the intricate details of it yet because those haven't come out, but you get the gist of it. 4 years, $76 million. Their top defensive back, their top corner is locked in. Brandon being just, another in-house deal done just blows my mind, but I've already talked about it. I have not talked to you about it. What are your opinions right now on Christian Benford getting done? The money that he signed for as opposed to what we were talking about, and just what Brandon Beane's been able to do this offseason as a whole when it comes to, again, in-house taking care of things.
Yeah, I mean, it really goes back to last offseason when they, made their cap trims last year with trading Stephon Diggs and letting Mitch Morse go and Gabe Davis and all of those moves a year ago, because they were setting up for this offseason to be able to
Yeah.
give these young guys those extensions. And so you really do have to give Brandon Beane and his whole salary cap team a lot of credit for the writing on the wall is probably too strong, but seeing where they were going and making a preemptive plan for it, 13, 14 months ago. Specifically with the Benford extension, it came in below what most people were thinking. They were thinking he was going to get $20 to $22 million per year. And Beane has been able to sign a bunch of these kind of what we consider below market deals this offseason with several of those young up and comers like Greg Rousseau, Khalil Shakir. Part of it is like Benford's never cashed a huge NFL check before, so he has some incentive to lock that stuff in early as opposed to waiting another year and like seeing if he can cash in then. But part of it is also being, part of a really good organization, an organization is going to win, and teams are more like, or players are more likely to give teams like that, the benefit of the doubt on a little hometown discount, especially when they turn around and they extend a guy that's got 4 freaking years left on his deal and Josh Allen. Like, they've shown that they will reward you eventually if you still keep playing at that high level. So I think all of that comes together for a Christian Benford extension, a little bit below what we thought he could make on the open market.
Do you almost feel like one of the points that you were making that kind of resonated with me, I hadn't really thought much about, but you talk about what they did last season and getting rid of Diggs and Morse and Trey and, building towards what they knew they were going to do this year, really locking up as many of their own as they can. And again, that you almost can't ask for more. I mean, James Cook, Connor McGovern, still two guys out there that are going to potentially go into the final year of their deal. But all in all, I mean, to get 4 key guys locked up, not to mention Josh Allen, is kind of amazing. I guess my question for you, based on what you just said, was, doesn't it almost make last year, this past season, feel like a bonus? Like they were getting rid of money and good core veteran players to build towards re-signing so many guys right now. The 2024 season, I almost said 25, they make it to the AFC Championship game regardless. Does it almost kind of feel to you in any kind of way, almost like a bonus season, like they were playing with house money in terms of their long-term planning, how they operated last year? It almost feels like they were playing with house money, and last season was just almost like a bonus, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And I know a lot of people were saying that, during the playoff run, but it does still come back to like Josh Allen is the window, and as long as you have the best player in the NFL on your team, they have a chance to win every year. That doesn't mean they're going to win every year or go to the AFC Championship game every year, but he can, smooth over a lot of rough spots, let's say.
Sure. So Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, they've both have spoken in Florida this week. So did Bills CEO Pete Guelli. He announced one of the things that I talked to Sal and a couple of the other guys, Buffalo guys. Highmark Stadium, we knew it was coming down eventually. Plays get open in 2026. We knew that. We knew eventually the stadium would have come down. He said March 2027 is going to come down, and kind of elicited a pretty swift reaction on social media. A lot of lifelong Bills fans, a lot of memories there at the stadium coming down. Oh, does it make you feel any kind of way? Now, I don't really go to games, and I haven't spent a lot of time at the stadium, and I've been pretty open about that. I don't know how you feel about that, but stadium coming down, when it becomes a reality, what are your thoughts on that? Or do you
Yeah,
not
I,
care?
I haven't been. I haven't been to a ton of things there. Like, it's not going to be like that sentimental thing for me
Right.
personally, because a lot of my memories are in the parking lot anyway, and so like it's just, the parking lot's still going to be there. It's just going to be a little bit different. So it doesn't have that same thing for me. But like, if you've been to 8 games there a year for the last however many years, I'm sure that there's going to be you know, um, some underlying sadness. I just look at it practically. Like, that place is like falling apart. Like, it did not surprise me at all when they decided they weren't going to
Mhm.
renovate it again and just were going to build the brand new one. And I mean, thankfully for them, all of their timelines lined up where they had Josh Allen and stability in the entire organization, so that they could get it through with, without much rancor from around the state.
Yeah, look, I have no personal real connection to the stadium itself. Obviously, I have a big connection to the team, but not to the stadium.
Yeah.
And I understand though, many fans do. For a lot of fans, many of the best times that they've ever had, or some of the worst times they've ever had, have come in that stadium through the years. Not for me. For me, probably I went to see a Garth Brooks concert not too long
Oh
ago
yeah.
at the stadium. I probably have more memories from that than any Bills game or event there, because I'm not an in stadium guy who goes to the games. That's just not what I do.
Yeah.
What would be your ideal right now? And there's a lot of ideas flown around, but like, can you see this potentially? And you're talking, 3, 4, 5, 6 years maybe down the road, but like they want to make that area kind of more of a destination. What would be something cool that you could see going up around that area that can make it more of a destination? I'm not really sure how they can have the room to do things like that, but
Hmm.
I don't know.
Well, I saw Beauvais. I think it was Beauvais was talking about putting the Top Golf there, because we've been hearing about Top Golf for forever. It's just like, I mean, having something there would be nice. Like, whether it's like a Bills museum in addition to the Bills store. The Greater Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame doesn't have a physical space, does it? I don't think it does. But you could do something like that out there. But I still think it's far enough away from the city center. And I know I'm going to get like hate tweets from this, because I mentioned that Orchard Park is like not close to downtown Buffalo, and everyone's like, it's 15 minutes. I'm like, yeah, but that's if you have a car and you're not traveling from out of town and all that other stuff. So, like, anyway, that's neither here nor there. I just don't necessarily see it as enough of a destination where you're going to be doing all sorts of development in Orchard Park around this Bill Stadium, especially when you only think about the fact that there's, like, I don't know, 10 to 12 meaningful events there a year. And so and I know, the Bill COO already talked about this, like, they're going to get through the opening of the stadium. They're going to get through the first NFL season at the stadium before they start talking about adding, a whole slew of major events there. But I just don't see it as like a venue that's going to be a 365-day venue. And so because of that, I don't know how much actual like development you can do around there, because it's going to be limited to whatever 30 dates a year or something like that.
Um, yeah, I don't know how much more realistically you can do. Isn't maybe I'm naive on this too. Isn't the old stadium that area going to eventually be parking?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what they
I
said.
really don't know. I think Matt Bove's suffering from a little bit of Florida fever right now. You know, those guys are down in Florida covering the owners' meetings with the palm trees and the sunshine. The Top Golf. I know they went to Pop Stroke. Which, by the way, Pop Stroke in Florida is the shit. It got built where I lived, 10 minutes from where I lived. However, it got built after I left, but I've been back a couple times. Pop Stroke is awesome. It's putt-putt, it's a restaurant, it's a bar. And by the way, it's not normal putt-putt. I mean, it's incredible on the greens kind of
Mm,
putt-putt. Yeah, it'd be cool in Buffalo. You better put a dome on it though, because you'll only be able to use it 5 months of
right.
the year. Something like that. Yeah, I'd like to see more stuff go up there. I just don't know realistically how much more you do. Good news for the two bars, of course, that are connected of sorts to the stadium. O'Neill's, Prohibition. I'm sure they were sweating out, when the stadium, not knowing where it was going to be. Like if that goes downtown, that puts a big, big hit on their business. But yeah, we'll see how that plays out. And that's a long way down the road. Let's transition into, and I said, we're going to be all over the place today. A lot of stuff I want to get to. Let's talk the draft a little bit for the Bills.
Mm,
We've spent so much time talking about, watching, listening, reading, writing about, the Bills draft needs. And three of them just stick out like a sore thumb. They're very obvious: cornerback, defensive tackle, and edge rusher. They're going to address those three positions. And at least two of those three, I'd be willing to bet my life that they're going to be done early. But when you look at this roster, I want to spend a few minutes here with you, Matt, kind of going over some positions. And these aren't going to be first round picks. They probably won't be day two picks either, although you never know. But there's a couple of positions of we'll call sneaky need right now with the Bills that well, maybe needs not the best word. They could use some help at these positions, some reinforcements. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some positions that they may address to the draft that people aren't really talking about. Let's start with tight end, okay? Because you have, you're like, what? Tight end? I mean, you got Dalton Kincaid, you got Dawson Knox. You're all set there. Well, this could be the last season that Dalton Knox is a Buffalo Bill. You look
mhm.
at over the cap. If they were to cut him after this year, it'd eat about close to 7.5 million of dead cap, but they would save over 9.66 million. So you're talking close to 10 million by cutting Dawson Knox after this year. If Dalton Kincaid elevates his game, you probably feel comfortable, good enough to get rid of Dawson. Maybe you start over and get cheaper there. Um, do you agree with that? Like that's something that makes sense to you? Like maybe in this draft, fourth round, fifth round, or somewhere around that, you're trying to find the Dawson Knox TE2 inline guy replacement. Make sense to you?
I do think it makes sense. And you didn't even mention the fact that they haven't re signed Quentin Morris. And so they don't have that third tight end option on their roster right now. So they really do need a depth tight end. Could that be a cost controlled guy like Quentin Morris? Yeah, absolutely. He's still out there as far as I know. But it could also be a cost controlled guy in that fourth round draft pick or the fifth round draft pick, especially when they have so many picks in those middle rounds.
Sure. And right now, well, they do have Zach Davidson, but
Yep.
when you're talking Quentin Morris, your TE3 needs to be a guy who can play special teams. And Quentin Morris is a good special teams player. By the way, I got a special teams thing I want to get with you on shortly. But yeah, they're two completely different types of tight ends. So between Morris and, like I said, just basically replacing Knox, I think tight end is going to be a relatively sneaky need. Another position where it's not about this year, this is about the future. And plus, you don't draft for just one season. You draft for the next
Mhm.
3-4 years. Interior offensive line. Connor McGovern and David Edwards, both right now are going into the last year of their deals. You got Van Pan Granger, the center that you took in the fifth round last year. You got Alec Anderson, who's that sixth offensive lineman for now. Tylen Grable, a rookie they felt pretty good about last year, a 6th-round pick as well. Kind of, for depth, that's fine, but I'm not sure how I feel about those guys as potential starters down the road. What do you think about this position? Again, we're given 2 starters right now, or both going in the last year of their deal. This could be a position. I mean, I could even see, they don't have a 3rd-round pick right now, but maybe they do something to get into the 3rd round. I'd say as high as the 3rd round is where realistically you could start looking at addressing this position.
I could see that. I think there's probably higher than they would want to go, but your points are right that they have guys on 1 year deals right now. It's really going to depend on what they think of the development of, say, Van Prank Granger or even an Alec Anderson. Like, is Anderson, and Anderson's going to be a restricted free agent at the end of the year too. So really,
Mhm.
they've got 3 of their top offensive linemen on one expiring contracts coming up in the 2025 season. So I could see that, but also, like, what do they think of, like, they've got a whole bunch of guys in that roster depth limbo kind of thing, and so, like, they might not even see the field, kind of like Alec Anderson until he was promoted to the 6th offensive lineman. So it really, like, we just have no way of knowing what they think of those guys, at this point in their careers, and so, like, maybe the preseason's a good kind of indicator for that, but we won't know that for a while.
This position that we're going to talk about next, running back, it feels to me so mysterious. Like, I don't know, but they could use a mid-round guy, again, 3rd, 5th round, somewhere maybe in that range to groom if they plan on losing James Cook. Certainly not a priority because they still have James Cook and they still have both Ray Davis, who they drafted last year, and Ty Johnson, both back for the next 2 years, not 1 year. So they're both back for the next 2 years. So I'm not saying, even if they were to trade James Cook tomorrow, I'm not saying this is necessarily a priority position, but it's also very interesting to me, Matt, because what does it say? Let's just say, or so you got Cook, you got Davis, you got Johnson. Let's say the Bills draft a running back with their first, 109 overall. I know that's their first 4th rounder. Let's say they draft a running back. If they do, Matt, what's that telling you?
I mean, it's telling me that James Cook's probably on his way out, but I find that hard to believe. I don't think that they're going to do that this year, because I like their running back room the way it is right now. Um, we've seen them be able to plug in, like, to just draft a guy and plug him right into the lineup right away, whether it was Ray Davis this year or James Cook when he first came in the league, Devin Singletary. So, like, I don't I don't necessarily want to waste a year of a cost controlled running back, like, burying him on the depth chart. And so drafting a guy in the 2026 NFL draft makes way more sense to me to replace James Cook than drafting a guy to develop him now.
That's a very good point. I don't see a fit. If you draft short of trading James Cook now, if you
And I
don't
think
do
that's a
that, if you
mistake. Yeah.
yeah, so do I. We're actually
Yeah.
going to talk about that in a second, but or shortly. But yeah, I agree with you. Short of trading him right now, you draft a guy in the mid round, you're wasting a pick for this year at least anyway. And you got Ray Davis who would be going into his 3rd year. So I just don't see the ceiling being very high for a guy. You still want to get guys, even if it's in the 4th round or so. You get guys who you project that have high ceilings. And if you draft a running back, I'm not sure how high you can really project his ceiling to be with this team right now. Linebacker. All right. So this is probably, not certainly, but probably Matt Milano's last year in Buffalo. And Dorian Williams is your only solid depth player right now. Bale Inspector is a mess who's always hurt. Joe Andreessen is a nice story. He'll compete for a roster spot again, but not really expecting the world from him. Olafoshio, the 5th-round rookie last year, I didn't learn a thing about him last year, so I know nothing about if he's going to have a future with this football team or not. Feels like a team that could certainly use a linebacker, especially given the fact that Milano is injury prone, and Terrell Bernard gets nicked up a lot the way he plays football out there as well. Feel like this could be certainly a mid-round pick and maybe even a little bit higher?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in the last couple weeks or something, like replacing Bale Inspector as like the floor of your linebacker core, and also setting yourself up to replace Dorian Williams. So should Williams move into the starting lineup to replace Matt Milano, and so like
Yeah.
just keep raising that floor at the linebacker position. I definitely could see something like using one of those fourth round picks on a linebacker. Um, Even one of the late round picks, like I know Spector himself was what, seventh round pick. So like you can do things with those late draft picks and see a path to the roster for a guy you take at linebacker, especially because, like you said, Joe Andreessen's going to be fighting for a roster spot. Nothing's guaranteed for him either. So they've got actual roster spots in play at the linebacker position that you could add to the mix.
You saying raise the floor at that position makes a lot of sense to me because I don't think the floor after Dorian Williams, I don't think the floor is high at all. Between
Right.
Spector, Andreessen, LaFoe show, at least at this time anyway. That doesn't scream to me high floor. One other position, you're gonna laugh. I disagree, but I got punter on the list. Look, they're not going to hand Jake Camarda the job, and I know they signed Brad Robbins, who played in 2023 with the Bengals, just on Monday. Let me add something to that, by the way. So I always, when the Bills lose somebody, I like to go to the fan base where he's going to and kind of get a feel for how they feel. Cause I know how I feel about that Bills player. I watch him, I know them pretty intimately. When a player signs here, I love going to the fan base of the team that they left to
Mhm.
kind of gauge the temperature. Like that safety that they just signed from Forrest from
Mhm.
Washington. A lot of Washington fans were really high on him. A lot of guys, kind of a mixed bag. Like Matt Collins going to New England. I know a lot of Bills fans hate that move, including myself right here. I don't know how you feel about that. I fought with Joe from Queens, by the way, on the show last night. Absolutely hate that move. He doesn't give a shit. Matt Collins is just another person on the team to him. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. Here's my point, Matt, long winded. Brad Robbins might universally be thought of as a complete scrub by the Bengals. I couldn't find one comment from one person who said, "Hey, that could be a good signing for the Bills." Universally speaking, from coming from Bengals fans, this dude just absolutely sucks. And look, he's a guy who's just going to be on the roster come camp. Here's my whole point, man. They're going to draft a punter. And we're going to have, forget about Puntpalooza that Joe B gets excited about every year, the possibility. You're going to get a bonus. You may get, they might draft one and you could have a triple threat summer camp competition here. Draft a damn punter because Jake Camarda is and Brad Robbins apparently sucks. This is going to be the year the Bills draft a punter. Yes? No? Maybe? What do you think? I know you were making fun of something with punters on Twitter earlier.
I would agree with you about the Bills' need at punter. I would agree with you about like this is like we just talked about like drafting players in the late rounds that could actually make the roster. That would normally be the case with this, but this particular punter class is absolutely horrible. None of them were considered draftable in our SB Nation rankings, which is a spoiler for something that's coming out in like a week or two.
Really?
And then even yeah, and on the consensus big board, the highest punter they have is the 313th best player on the draft board, but there's only 257 slots in the 2025 NFL draft. So I I don't disagree that the Bills are going to do something at punter between now and the preseason. I just don't necessarily see it as drafting one because I think this punter class is terrible.
Well, you suck. You just ruined my day. I was, really looking forward to drafting a punter and getting him into camp, but you're saying there's not really draftable punters. That blows.
We might see one, but I the list is very barren this year.
Okay, well, that sucks, man. It takes a lot of fun out of this whole thing for me because I was
Right.
willing to bet, but one of my hot takes was going to be, pre-draft hot takes that the Bills punter this year was going to be a rookie that they draft, and probably not going to be. Then I don't give a shit. They're going to do something because neither of those guys should
Something.
be handed the job, and I don't want to see those two guys fight it out. That would be your wrestling guy. What would be the equivalent if we're having a training camp battle between Camarda and Brad Robbins, wrestling wise? That would be like who the hell would that be like? That'd be like Austin Theory versus. That's
Oh man,
actually
I was going lower. I was thinking Tozawa or something like that.
yeah, Tozawa. Okay, Tozawa and Otis turn on each other, and
Right.
that's the match. That's like the equivalent of the summer. Yeah, I'm not
Mhm.
a fan of that. Anyway, all right, let's do this. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I went through the NFL draft value chart. You know, people always say, well, the Bills should move up to here. They should move up for this guy. They should move up there. But they have no idea like what it would cost and where realistically that would get you. I wrote down a handful of, I did the math, used my calculator because I can't do it in my head. And I came up with a handful of scenarios where the Bills using various picks, where that could get them up to in the draft. So take a quick break, come back, talk about that and some of the things that went down over the last couple of days at the owners' meetings in Florida. All right, Matt Warren, SB Nation, with me here on our Wednesday midweek show. Some fun, I think they're fun anyway, Bills trade up scenarios. Right now, they own pick 30. Okay. And let's not talk about prospects today. A little bit too early for that. Plus, I got a bunch of mock drafts coming up. But let's just say it's player X at whatever position you really like him, a defensive tackle, an edge, a corner. But you're concerned if you stay at 30, you're going to get burned. Somebody's going to hop you, or this guy's just going to get picked off the board before you could get there. Where can you move up to without doing anything absolutely, crazy and absurd? Like they're not trading for Travis Hunter. I know there's a lot of fun things to, talk about on Twitter. It's just not happening. But if you want to be a little bit realistic and you don't want to quite stay at 30 and you want to move up, I did a little bit of math. Their first round pick, which is 30. And if you traded that in 109, which is their first fourth, because I believe they have two, that would get you up to around 26, 27. Do you feel here, and we're not going to go, I'm not going to get your thought on all these, but getting up to 26, 27 feels like, let's say, defensive tackle. You like Harmon and Grant, right? Those are the two guys that we are already hearing plenty about with Bills fans and content creators. You don't want to wait for 30. Almost feels like a no-brainer that you should probably get out of 30 and move up 26, 27 and giving up your first fourth when you still have another one and two twos right now. Feels very sensible, doesn't it?
It feels like the Brandon Bean trade. The kind of trade he did for Kaiir Elam, the kind of trade he did for Dalton Kincaid, like just moving up a little bit, not like, massively up the board, giving up one of those fourth round picks, or I think it was a third round, or yeah, a third round pick at one point, like just to move up a little bit to get a player. But that's when you see the cliff is coming at the position that you really are looking at. And so I think the defensive tackle class might be deep enough where we don't get that this year,
Sure.
and we get more of what happened with the wide receivers last year, where he's content to just wait there and see what falls to him.
Sure.
But
Now,
yes, I do like that the fourth rounder plus the pick number 30 moving up to 26, 27. It feels like the Brandon Bean move.
yeah, 100%. That's the move that I feel like of all the ones I'm throwing out there that'll be most likely. We'll call it a mild one when you're not really giving up too much. And yeah, and you're right about defensive tackle. It is definitely deeper. Maybe it's an edge. Maybe it's a corner. Hell, maybe it's a
Mhm.
receiver for all we know. But there's a guy that they like. They just don't trust it being there at 30, so they want to make a move. You give up 109 per the value chart. Again, not no
Mhm.
proven fact, but per the chart,
No, that's right.
that's what it tells you. All right, so now let's get into a little bit deeper. There's a guy that you really like, an edge rusher, whoever. Again, the position don't really or player don't really matter, but there's just a guy that you really like, and you don't want him. You want to get past the 20s. Okay, if you were to give up, now they have two twos, 56 and 62. According to the math, if you give up 30 and 62, which is their second of two second rounders, that gets you up to about 18. That's doable, but 30 to 18 feels like you would have to probably really like the player a lot to move up that much because now you're giving up one of your two twos to go get him.
It's like the Brian Thomas trade a lot of us wanted them to make last year to move
Yeah,
up to get like that guy. Like you see a top 10 pick that's available, or a top 10 guy on your board, but he's down at like, 18 or 19, and you might be willing to pull the trigger on that. The Bill Brandon Beane's probably going to make all three of these picks, but he has precedent for this. Like he's done it before, where they traded up to get Josh Allen, and then they packaged second round picks to get back into the first round to select Tremaine Edmonds. So trading those upper picks there is precedent with Brandon Beane for that. It's not just that little move up like Kaiir Elam or little move up like Dalton Kincaid. He's made big swings on the draft day as well.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add, so I said 62 would get you to about to 18, according to the chart. 56, which is their first one, that gets you 1 to 2 picks earlier, so it's interchangeable. But do you feel like this too? You could look at it this way. The Bills have 2 twos right now, and you could take it as, well, you can package one of those and you get up to the late teens. You still have another second rounder as well. So you could still, instead of having 30, 56, 62, you could get 17 and 62 or 17 and 56. We don't know who they like, but there could be a player like that. I do think I would say it's not likely. I think the first scenario where they go up to 26, 27 almost feels likely to me. This doesn't necessarily feel likely, but it feels very realistic because they have 2 twos to still be able to go up to 17, 18 and go get a guy that they really like and still have that at least 1 second round pick. There's another scenario. Now, this is where it starts to get far-fetched, okay? But it could happen, but it's far-fetched. If you love a player, and I mean love a player, the top corner in the draft, or maybe the second edge, or whatever it may be, the kid from Georgia, Jalen Walker, falls to around this spot. Maybe you want to go up and get him. 30, 56, and 62. So your first and both your seconds. If you're wondering what the value would be for them folks, it gets you up to about 11 or 12. Okay. Or you want to give up 30, you want to keep your 2 twos this year, but you want to give up your first round next year. Again, unlikely, admittedly, but your first this year and your first next year, figuring it's going to be right around the same next year, it gets you around to the same 2, 11 and 12. You almost feel like any scenario would be too rich for your blood to go up that high and give up that much.
I do, especially because they don't have a third round pick. And so you keep saying that they have 2 second rounders. Yeah, that's true. But I don't think they're going to leave with only 1 pick in the first 2 days of the NFL draft. And so it just feels like giving up a lot. They have that, they have that extra second rounder. They really want to come out of this draft with, I would think, at least 2 starters, if not 3, with that like eventual starter maybe being the third. Just like that's how they've rolled with whether it's the linebacker that they pick a year ahead of when they need to, or like I know Dwayne Carter didn't necessarily perform that way last year, but like they see him as a guy that could take meaningful snaps in the future. So they want to come out with 2 or 3 guys from those first 2 days. And so I definitely do not see them trading all 3 of those picks for 1 guy.
Neither do I. And I would say this too. You look at this roster, I don't know that there's a hole in this roster gapingly big enough that you would need to go up and give all that to just go get 1 guy, especially with Christian Benford locked up now, because your CB1, whoever you're getting is going to be, and I think it's going to be a cost controlled CB2 edge rusher. Maybe the Mason Graham, the kid from Michigan, but he's going to be gone. Like he'd be a guy that you would do something like that for, but 11 or 12 ain't going to get you him. He's going to be gone in the first 5 to 6, 7 picks. So you're not getting him. Yeah, that's just far-fetched, but we'll call it informational purposes. If you were wondering out there, you want the Bills to get in the top dozen picks, that's what it's going to cost you this year and next year's number 1, or this year in both your 2s. Here, I got one last one for you. I feel this one's very realistic, actually. You keep your pick at 30, okay? You got 56 and 62. Package both of them together. That's going to get you to the very end of the first round, according to the math. I personally like this one a lot. So you could pick hypothetically at 30 and come right back and have the next pick at 31 or 32 instead of having 2 twos. You're picking basically 2 guys instead of 3, of course, if you make this kind of trade. But, I mean, at 31, 32, you're talking instead of 56, it's 24 slots ahead. Maybe they love an edge, or maybe they love a DT and a corner, and they're both there at the end of the first round. You can go get them. 56, 62 will get you to the end of that first round. Maybe go get them both that way. Plus, one other factor that people don't talk about enough, get in that end of the first round to get you a 5th-year guy. 5 years, you got him. Cost controlled. Team option for year 5. How'd that feel about some for you? Like 56, 62? Get you up to the end of the first.
It's attractive. It would be like you said, a quick turnaround when they're picking 30. Just because I mean we saw the Texans do it last year, but they were all ready up at the top, and they had that worked out well in advance. It's harder to work out something on the fly for pick
Yeah.
number 31. But like I could see it as like maybe something that could happen, like 31, 32 in there. Um, or, whether it's you can package 56 and 62 to move up to the top of the second round, that whole next day, in the bidding war and, move up to like the 34th pick or something and get something back later or something. I don't know. But like there's a lot you can do with those two picks, which is, I'm sure Brandon Bean is like doing all of these like mock
Yeah.
trades and all this other stuff too.
Yeah. It's kind of fun this year, the possibilities because the Bills have 2 twos. Like I said, it puts so much into play. Everything almost, except for moving into the top. I just don't see moving into the top 12. But according to these numbers, I'd say from pick, say 18 on, forward or backwards, pretty much everything is going to be in play. And again, this is going by the draft value chart. So take
Mhm.
that for what
There's
it's worth.
there's another trade that I really like. It's the trade up from 56 using the 109. You can get up to like Atlanta at 46, and they're kind of starting over with a new quarterback, and
Yeah.
so like they might want those extra picks where you see one of your first round guys has fallen to the 14th pick of the second round, and you go up there and snatch the last first round grade you have on your board, and so that one's a really attractive one to me too.
It would be pretty shocking to see the Bills use all 10 of their picks, right?
Oh yeah, they've got what is it, 4 picks or in yeah four. They're not going to pick 4 times in 9 picks. Between rounds 4 and 5, they got like 3 times in the fifth round plus the first pick of the sixth round, I think, or something like that. So
Yeah.
it would be very surprising to see them make all those picks. They could.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen Bean trade some of those picks for like future. That's why they have these ones this year. Is he traded them for a future? But I just think it's more likely that they package him to move up, especially with the depth at the edge and defensive tackle positions in this draft. I think it's just going to line up with their future team needs too. So moving up to get a guy in the third round or to get a guy in the early fourth round that you really like that's falling, just makes a lot of sense for Brandon Bean.
Yeah. A combination, whether they move up and package some of their picks to move up, or whether maybe they trade, like you said, like this year's sixth for next year's fifth, or something like that. Next year's fifth for a fourth for a team that really likes a player. I could see that happening one way or the other. All right, let's kind of pivot back to the owner meetings here. Some pretty interesting comments coming from both head coach and general manager. Let's start with the GM. Maybe my single biggest takeaway from either of them speaking was Brandon Bean talking about James Cook.
Mhm.
Very, I would say, definitive in saying that there ain't no extension coming anytime soon, if at all, for James Cook. Feels pretty much right now that there's 2 options: play out the season, see what happens, or trade him, which I think is a stupid idea. And I really hope that they don't do that. I will say though, I never spent 1 second thinking a trade was even an option until now. Now I'm thinking it's at least on the table. I don't necessarily buy it. But anyway, what was your takeaway on Brandon Bean being pretty open and poignant about talking about James Cook and not getting an extension done and probably not happening? He said he pretty much all but said that.
It was interesting to me. He said that they went to Cook kind of early in the process, and then he wouldn't come off his number, so they moved on to the guys that would come off the numbers. And so, like we talked about the below market deals for Shakir, below market deals for Benford, and Rousseau. Those guys came down off of what their quote unquote value would be on the open market, whereas James Cook has insisted all along that he wants to make 15 million. So he's
Yeah.
not willing to come to the Bills number right now. And so that's why the Bills moved on. That makes complete sense to me from a business standpoint. I don't think it has anything whatsoever to do with the fact that he voiced that openly. If he was willing to come down off of his 15 million, he would be signed right now, but he's obviously not. And so I think it has less to do with his tweeting or whatever, his social mediaing, than it does with like the actual number on the ledger line.
Looking forward into the future, I think the term vibes feels a little bit corny to me, but I feel like the 2024 Buffalo Bills were all about vibes. I mean,
Mm.
true, legitimate, unselfish team. Everybody eats. A lot of fun, playing for each other, yada, 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 yada. You worried a little bit about the vibes being shook a little bit if this gets potentially ugly? Like could this get ugly to you with James Cook? Could you see a situation where he goes, you know what? I ain't coming to camp. I'm gonna come to camp eventually. I'll be a hold in.
Mhm.
You're gonna wish I wasn't in camp. I know for a fact players have that mindset at times. I've heard about a couple instances in the past. They'll show up when you're not getting the full 100% unselfish, happy-go-lucky James Cook. The vibes. Are you worried about something potentially like that if they just say, you know what, you're playing this year out? He's only getting 5 million. If your boy wants 15 million in an extension and he's tweeting about it or IGing about it in February, him showing up for camp for a contract that's going to only pay him like 5 point something million. I don't know how I feel about that, man. Do you got concerns about that at all or no?
I think Bean talked about this in a really productive way too. He said that well, James is going to want to come in and put his best foot forward for us, certainly, but also for the 31 other NFL
Mhm.
teams he's auditioning for. So I do think there's a strong possibility he's going to miss, if not all of the offseason, at least most of the offseason work. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he missed a lot of training camp practices with, some sort of nagging injury that we can't like actually diagnose. But I think once the lights turn on, he's going to be full go because like Bean said, he's going to be auditioning for that next big contract. He has to earn that 15 million from someone, and he can't do that from taking plays off and all that other stuff. Which does bring me to a different vibe conversation, and that's like Josh Allen wins the MVP. Does he still have the chip on his shoulder? Christian Bernard or Benford doesn't have to play for a contract. Terrell Bernard doesn't have to play for a contract. Like some of these other guys, like the vibes could very well shift in this building this year, and it's going to be on Sean McDermott. To motivate some of these guys in a different way. I'm not saying that Josh Allen's going to play unmotivated. Please do not misunderstand me. But like the vibe is going to shift in that building a little bit as you go from like young, scrappy, and hungry to like some of these guys just got paid for the first time and like just noticeably taking a step back, or even a Matt Milano taking a step back, meaning like I can't kill my body over this because it's a business. I have to make sure I'm able to play the next season. Like there could be some very distinctive vibe shifts in this room.
That is an outstanding point. Maybe you're talking like Ricky Vaughn in Major League Two. He comes
Oh
up, he's
boy.
hungry, he becomes a star, he gets arrogant and cocky, and you're not getting the best version of Ricky Vaughn. Are we going to see that with some Josh Allen and some Christian
John,
Benford? And
when Allen gets a haircut and like starts wearing like better glasses, then we'll talk. But I don't think that's he of all the guys, he's not the guy I'm worried about because he's already had tens of millions of dollars. Plus, he's dating, he's marrying, Haley Steinfeld. He was at the movie premiere this week. Like, he's been living it up for a while now and still played his ass off. So, he's not the guy I'm worried about.
jokes aside, for sure, head
Yeah.
coach, coaching staff, that is important. You reel everybody in. That is managing egos with professional athletes in any locker room of any sport is a very underrated trait that the good coaches have because it's just human
Mhm.
nature to change, to mature, to evolve as you get older. And again, money, fortune, fame, things like that. I'll say this with the James Cook hole and Brandon Bean's comments about he's playing for a new contract to impress us, to impress the league. He's showcasing his talents for the league. I don't necessarily buy that. I feel like at this point, the league knows who he is. And I would point to an example specifically. Hassan Reddick goes to the Jets, doesn't get his contract. Huge pain in the ass, sits out, comes back, eventually mails it in. Right? He
Mhm.
mailed it in with the New York Jets. Let's just call it what it is. He mailed it in. Free agency starts. Who's the very first free agent to sign a contract this offseason? It was Hassan Reddick. He goes to Tampa Bay and he gets 14 million. I think 12 of that was guaranteed as well. Tampa already knows who he is. teams around the league, I feel like they know who James Cook is. I'm just saying. And I'm not suggesting that he's going to hold out or that he's going to hold in and be a problem. I'm not suggesting he's going to, but I don't buy that whole showcase for the league stuff. They know who he is. The league knows who he is. I could see this. I hope I'm wrong. And I'm not saying it's going to be, but I could see it being a problem for the Bills this year.
It's been a long time since you've heard the name Le'Veon Bell too. Like he refused his franchise tag the year that the second time, I guess, and that was in 2018. But then 2019, he signed a huge deal with the Jets. Now he sucked after that, and he was cut very quickly. But he still was able to sign that big deal. To your point, like he still signed a 4-year, $52 million
Mhm.
deal after holding out for an entire season. But then he was released 1 year later, 1.5 years later.
Sure. And I mean, look, another situation where maybe you can't really fully blame the player is, well, you know what? Screw it. You're not paying me. I'm going to play to not get hurt. I want to get to the market next year. I want to get a big contract. I'm going balls to the wall above and beyond for you. I blow my knee out. I tear my ACL. I'm almost worthless in the open market. So I'm going to look out for myself. If you're not going to give me a contract and I'm nicked up, I ain't playing through that pain. I'm not playing through that injury. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to take care of my body and worry about my body more than I worry about this football team. And again, I'm not saying James Cook's going to have that mindset. I'm just saying it could happen. So for me, that's a little bit concerning. Um, Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott both talked about what they were looking for in a corner, and tackling was prominently mentioned as a trait that they're looking for. Now, they were talking about rookies, but I've also immediately started thinking of the veteran because I've seen so many fans talking about Asante Samuel Jr., who's still out there right now, a guy that they want. My first thought as I'm hearing them talk, I'm like, do not go and buy an Asante Samuel Buffalo Bills jersey because they ain't signing this dude because that dude is a lousy tackler and you don't really have any interest in tackling. I'm pretty sure you could agree that's not really something to debate there. No Asante Samuel Jr. He ain't coming to the Bills, not based on the criteria that Bean and McDermott we're talking about, right?
I think that's right. But they also, at least Bean mentioned that they have not closed the door on bringing back Rasul Douglas,
Yeah.
who's still out there. Obviously, they're probably waiting for him to come off his number. There's other guys out there too, like the compensatory pick formula kind of like anybody signed after April 29th doesn't count towards the comp pick formula. So you could be seeing them waiting for both after the draft and after the comp pick deadline to add a guy in May.
Agreed. Were you surprised that Sean McDermott was publicly pushing for banning the tush push, which got tabled, and we're going to talk about that in the rules here in just a second to close out the show. Well, were you a little bit surprised that Sean McDermott was kind of vocal about wanting it pushed, preaching about player safety and, saying that the data is not out there yet, but we want to get ahead of it. And that was his reasoning. Feels a little bit weird considering that other than maybe Philly, the Bills ran that play more than anybody in the NFL. And other than the AFC Championship game when they happened to need it the most, they were more successful running it than anybody else except for maybe Philly in the NFL. Did I take you back a little bit?
I think it was Brett Coleman who said, "Yeah, they're so worried about it. They ran it 4 times in the AFC Championship game." Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Not necessarily. Like, especially if he wants to protect Josh Allen, like that might be the thing that he does to protect Josh Allen is get this thing passed. Now, McDermott kept leaning on his time. He's like, "I'm part of the competition committee. It's not just about my team. It's about the whole NFL. All this other stuff." But I'm I'm surprised in that regard because they have used it so much without regard for the safety of his own players, and now he's talking about the safety of all 32 NFL teams. But I can at least see his perspective on it. I don't like. I agree with like Andrew Brandt and a whole bunch of these other guys out there. Is that like the data doesn't exist, so I don't think you have a leg to stand on when you're trying to base it off of injuries.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't buy it. Some of these rule changes things. So again, we're recording this now. It's around lunchtime. I got to remind you of this on Tuesday as we record here. We'll talk about the stuff that's been passed officially and some things that have been officially tabled. There's lots of other things that are floating around that they're talking about. More things are going to be tabled, or they're still looking to tweak. Like I saw some things about some potential onside kicks, not having to wait to the fourth quarter to declare, being able to line up a little bit differently to kind of maybe encourage a better chance of the team kicking to recover. But we don't really know details enough to talk about that today. Let's talk about what we do know. One thing that was passed, both teams will now possess the ball in overtime, even if the first team scores a touchdown. Very interesting. So now it's basically that's what it is in the playoffs. However, the caveat is it's remaining at 10 minutes. So you're going to get, if you win that toss, you'd be like, well, I'd rather have the ball second because I want to know what I need to do. However, now it's interesting because by staying at 10 minutes, if Matt Warren's coach team wins the toss, he takes the ball, or you want to, or actually, I'm sorry, you want to let me get the ball first, and I go down and I score a touchdown, and I take 8.5 minutes to do so. You only got a minute and a half to respond. So I think you're going to see a lot of teams take the ball first now when they score. But anyway, what are your thoughts on both teams being able to possess the ball with the caveat that it's staying at 10 minutes instead of 15?
This was a Bills rule that was submitted like last year, the year before that for the whole. They obviously just made it for the playoffs, but the Bills submitted the rule for all the regular season and the postseason. They didn't submit it this year for that, but that's eventually what got it passed. I'm more of the fan of. I think that there should be more regular season ties. I don't like overtime in the regular season.
Yeah.
It's just a player. Like you want to talk about player safety, making them play extra minutes is like the opposite of player safety, and that's what Roger Goodell said for years and years and years. And now they're doing all this crap. So I'm more of a fan of getting rid of overtime completely in the regular season, but that's more of a me thing, I think.
Yeah. I do think there's going to end up probably maybe a couple more ties per year. I'm not going to say it's become common, but you could see it. I don't agree with you about overtime, and I'll tell you why. Again, being hypocritical, I just told you earlier in the show, I ain't at the stadium. I usually don't give a shit. But I'm going to tell you right now, if I spend a lot of money to go to the game, to park, to tailgate, to go in the stadium, to buy some beers, spend some money on food and all this shit, and I leave with the tie, I'm not liking that. I don't want no tie. That would piss me off. Now I know it could happen. It does happen from time to time, but I would not encourage ties. I like both teams possessing the ball. I personally, and I don't have a strong take on this, but I would have made it 15 minutes for overtime instead of 10. You might get a tie or two less. Another thing that was passed, and this is the one that I'm actually pretty high on, expanded replay assist. So roughing the passer, intentional grounding, unnecessary roughness, face mask, horse collar, tripping, or roughing running into the kicker. Those could all now have replay assist. And so we're clear though. What that means is if there is a penalty called on one of those, and there is
Mhm.
clear, undisputed evidence that it was a bad call, they could take the penalty away. What they cannot do is if a penalty was not called, replay assistants cannot make the penalty called. Like if Deion Dawkins grabs an edge rusher by the face mask and drags him down and it wasn't called, replay assist cannot make it a penalty. Conversely, if he gets called for a face mask and he clearly did not have a face mask penalty, they could take the flag off. So just so people, casual fans, can more understand it. This is the one out of all the things that are going on that I personally love the most. What are your thoughts on this?
I want to get the calls right. I think
Yeah.
most people want to get the calls right because we can see it from our couch really, really easily. I know it's not like in real time; it's a hard thing to do, and so giving the officials extra help there is not necessarily a bad thing. I know it's still going to piss people off that replay assist can't throw a flag, but I do think that at least this is a step in the right direction that we can right wrongs in one way.
Yeah. I love what see, the more you could take human error out of the game, the
Mhm.
better I feel. There's nothing worse than spending 3 hours being completely emotionally invested in a football game and ultimately, at least potentially, having it decided because of a horrible, horrible officiating call. This to me eliminates half of it. Again, if it's a call against you that shouldn't have been a call, it could get overturned. Still not all the way though, because again, if it's not called, they can't make it a penalty. So if the guy, if you're rooting for the Bills and Keon Coleman basically gets tackled down the sideline on a blatant pass interference, but it's not called, you're not going to get the call. So there's still the ability for refs to really piss you off, but at least this feels like to me eliminates half of what potentially sucks the most about the game, and that's just bad calls. Touchbacks. They're going to be going to the 35-yard line now. Translation, you're going to see a significant amount more of kick returns this season. Do you like that? Feels hypocritical. Again, you want to ban the tush push, safety issues. The league talks about safety all the time, and now there's going to be more kickoffs. I don't know the data, but it feels like a football play like that could lead to some injuries. I don't know. What are your thoughts right now? This is definitely going to result in more kickoffs. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, it's going to result in more kick returns for sure. The shortening of like how far the fielding team has to run, I think, is going to cut down on those injuries, and we saw that last year
Mm,
because they're not running from way the heck back where the kicker is actually kicking it off, so they're not getting that full head of steam and all of that. But so I like that they're kind of trying to keep the play interesting by moving it out from the 30 to the 35 and keeping it in the game. Um, I don't know. I don't have a huge take on this one. I'm just glad that they're not getting rid of kickoffs like totally.
sure, sure. Pretty interesting to me too that so special teams are going to matter a little more now again because you're going to
I think
have
so.
the kickoff team, the kickoff coverage team, they're going to matter a little more now. Interesting
Hmm.
to me that I wonder if they knew this was coming when they let Matt Collins go to New England. Like their value on Matt Collins was a lot lower. Maybe it would have been a little bit higher. Maybe Quentin Morris, who's still out there. These are guys who were good in those roles, special teams guys. And the Bills not really putting any priority on that. I wonder how that's
But
going to.
they did add another kick returner in free agency this year, maybe in anticipation of this. So I mean, they saw that this was coming. I think.
Yeah. Um, those are the rules that have been passed. The tush push, which we hit on, that's been tabled till May. Jordan Schultz reported that 16 teams were in favor of it. Diane Rossini said that there could be modifications for it. Said even Philadelphia, who obviously doesn't want it, to be banned, wasn't too happy with the outcome. They're talking about a situation, I don't know specifically, but like it could still like the tush push could get banned or still allowed, but with modifications, like things you can or can't do. So there still might be some change. It sounds promising. I don't know, man. Do you really have a strong take on it one way or the other? I don't. I don't like the tush push. I'm going to be honest with you, but I could also see like stop it. It could be stoppable. The Chiefs did it. If you're complaining about the Eagles, do what they do. Find a way to it doesn't have to be your quarterback. Have your fullback or have a running back be under center, and I don't know. Don't bitch about something if you can't stop it. It's like when you get blown out, you whine about it, make a stop on defense, and maybe the score don't get so bad. I don't know. I
Well,
don't have a strong pick.
I just don't understand. Is there a huge difference between handing off to Saquon Barkley at the one line and having him ram into the defensive line and the offensive lineman as opposed to just shoving Jalen Hurts? Like it feels like there's less impact on that play than there would be on the play that replaces it. So I, I don't love watching the tush push. I think like it's not an elegant play, but like it that doesn't make it a bad play.
Yeah. Kevin Seifert from ESPN. I'm just reading a tweet right now. He said competition committee chairman Rich McKay said the tush push discussion ended with Green Bay asking to review the old rule pre 2005, where teams were allowed to push and pull ball carriers anywhere on the field. That will be the subject of a May discussion. Look, I don't necessarily I like the quarterback sneak. I don't like people being able to just push you right from behind. We'll see if there'll be some modifications. Not really much to talk about until we learn one way or the other. Some things that were not passed, not tabled. I mean, this was just denied. I think it was Detroit who had proposed this. Defensive holding, illegal contact, will still be an automatic first down. There was a proposal to make them not an automatic first down. So I don't like this rule personally because it could be 3rd and 25, and you could get a ticky-tacky call,
Mhm.
defensive holding 5.5 yards off the line of scrimmage on a play where it's a 7-yard dump off the other side of the field that's got nothing to do with that guy, but that ref throws the flag before the pass is thrown. Bam, first down. I was kinda hoping this would be one that got passed, but it's not.
Yeah, and Jeremy Reisman, who's our Lions blogger over at Pride of Detroit, he and I talked about it on Tuesday morning because I just wanted his take. Like he's the Lions guy. The Lions introduced it. He's like, an offensive lineman holding on third down to prevent a sack loses 10 yards. A defensive player that's called for holding on the same play to prevent a first down loses like it's just a much more harmful penalty for them because it's a brand new set of downs for the offense. So just make it even for the offense and defense, and he'd be happier about it. It's like, I mean, if you really wanted to like call an offensive lineman for a loss of down because their guy was about to crush the quarterback, like I think that like would be even, but it's not even right now, and that's the biggest problem. So I know Brandon Bean was saying that he didn't think it was a good idea because like then on third and long you could be encouraging guys to be a little bit more grabby on some of the shorter routes because it would only be a 10-yard penalty. I can see a lot of different arguments for it, but yeah, I'm usually in favor of leaving the rules alone unless I feel like really really strongly about changing them.
I don't want to call it breaking news because it's not a done deal, but emerging news is the expectation is that Aaron Rodgers is going to sign
Yeah,
with the Steelers. The expectation is that he's going to continue to milk some more attention until he finally does. No shit. Of course he's signing with Pittsburgh. What the hell else is he going to do? The Steelers, we're talking about yesterday about being comfortable with Mason Rudolph being the starter. I'm like,
sure they
sure,
are.
sure, sure. Yeah. You go give DK Metcalf 30 million a year so that you could be comfortable with Mason Rudolph throwing him the football. Like we're all that stupid. Aaron Rodgers is doing what Aaron Rodgers does best, and that's shit off the field, not anything he does on the field anymore. All right, last thing here. I'm just going to lump these together so we can get out. The NFL uniform policy is changing. Teams can now
Mhm.
wear throwbacks up to 4 times per season. I'm not much of a uniform guy, so that doesn't do a lot for me, but I know a lot of people will be happy about that. Um, Tom Pelissero reported that the owners passed a resolution allowing the league to flex Sunday games to Thursday night with 21 days notice. He said just one game was flexed over the last 2 seasons or it was 28 days then. Today's
Correct.
vote keeps the Thursday night football flex in the toolbox. That shit I hate. I do not like that at all.
That's a big change, yes. Going from one day to a completely different day, I think, is very cumbersome for NFL fans.
Yeah, it's bad enough when you go for flex a game from 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock because
Yeah.
if a lot of fans, football's regional. It's not just the city. People come from Batavia, Rochester, Canada, all over for Bills games, and their travel, with hotel recommendations, things like that. I can tell you right now, if I am booking a trip, a drivable trip, and there's a 1 o'clock game, I'm checking out of my hotel Sunday. I'm not paying for an extra day of the hotel. Probably going to go to the game, and I'm probably going to drive 3 hours home. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
There's a lot of things that get
Yeah.
affected. I freaking hate flexes altogether. Cannot stand it. And the thought of having a game on Sunday and now you're going to play on Thursday night is just bullshit. I really hate it. It's the NFL dominating the world, though, man. It's what it's
Mhm.
all about. Which leads to the last thing here. They announced a triple header coming on Christmas, which is on a Thursday, of course. This feels to me like it's got a Bills game written all over. I envision it right now. A Buffalo Bills Christmas game on Thursday. Uh, Yo, they just said, piss off NBA. You ain't shit. Because it used to be the NBA was the Christmas kind of tradition. That's an afterthought now. Now last year they had 2 games on Christmas, this year 3. 2 of them on Netflix, one of them on Amazon Prime. You got any thoughts on that? Again, another thing I hate, Christmas, you should be with your families, man. But whatever. Again, this is just the NFL taking over the world.
I was surprised they weren't one of them last year. So, I mean, if I get a 1 year respite and it's now in 2025, like that just makes a whole lot of sense to me. And especially because they don't have to do the rigmarole last year where they did the 4 teams on Saturday, turning around to the Wednesday 2 games. I think it's much, much more likely that the Bills and their schedule will get one of those Christmas Day games. And it's gonna suck for me. I'm just telling you right now, but and I get that like not everybody celebrates Christmas and like people celebrate the holidays in different ways and all that stuff. But um, yeah, I was very glad when it was always the NBA because I didn't have to worry about watching any sports that day.
Yeah, yeah, man. I just, put it this way: if you're a Bills fan, you've been able to avoid last year. You avoided all the bullshit. You avoided any international games. You avoided having to play on Christmas. I know the Bills did play on Thursday night, but it was like week 2 against Miami last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got to avoid all the bullshit, having to play on Christmas, having to go overseas. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get lucky 2 times in a row. Whether the
No,
Bills are going overseas somewhere or whether they're playing on Christmas, hell, it might even be both. We're
mhm.
going to get screwed in that regard this year. I can feel it in my bones.
And we just went through like the whole like we played in every time slot on Thanksgiving, so like we're off Thanksgiving for a while. It would
Yeah.
seem, and now we're going to be on like Black Friday or Christmas, and like maybe Ireland. Who knows what like the lineup's going to look like. So we'll get a 9 a.m. Sunday game, we'll get a Thursday night game, we'll get like who knows where we're going to be.
Yeah, interesting times. A lot of stuff we
Are you,
covered.
are you tailgating for a 9 a.m. Ireland game? By the way, like
No,
you like getting up early to like get lubricated before the game kicks off at 9
no.
a.m.
Here's a fun fact. Here's something that's crazy. As much as I go too hard when I do, I don't party for Bills games.
Okay.
2
Okay.
reasons. Number 1, I end up doing a live show post game, and I
Right.
don't want to be too, ridiculous after the game. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I stay home. I quietly watch the game. I like to enjoy it a lot more and have the mind, the faculty to be able. Maybe I should start drinking, at least in the playoff game. Maybe I'm the reason why the Bills haven't gotten over the hump in the playoffs.
Oh,
It could be me.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
All right, that's gonna do it for this episode. Like I said, a lot of stuff we covered today. A lot more coming in over the next few weeks as well, leading up to the NFL draft. Thanks, buddy. Always good having you on the show.
Thanks a lot.
All right, guys, and I'll be back tomorrow. Our first Buffalo Bills mock draft. David Tilton from Cover One will be joining me. Talk to you guys then.